Welcome back to a podcast to answer your questions on addiction, recovery, and mental health by Wiseman Method Opioid Treatment Specialists. I'm your co-host, Dwight Hurst. I'm joined as always today by my fellow hosts, Claire Wiseman and David Livingston. This episode is actually the first part of a two-part conversation we had in answering the question, what constitutes enabling? Enabling is a big concept in the world of addiction and treatment. And we had a listener who asked us a question, by the way, thank you to Meg, our listener, all about what is enablement, how do we define it, and how do we stay away from it. Part one of this conversation is going to focus on the most commonly discussed type of enabling, which applies to the parent-child relationship, particularly parents of adult children. It's often what's focused on. The second part, which will be next episode, is focused more on enabling or not enabling or what to do instead of enabling in our own adult relationships, particularly partnered or romantic partner relationships. Let's get into it. So our question today comes from Meg, and what she wanted to know is, what does it mean to enable a loved one with an addiction? That's something we hear about a lot. People will say, I've known lots of people who say, when they try to help their loved one, they are told that they're enabling. There's a lot of question over what is and what isn't enabling, and so I think this is a really pertinent question. So what's the first reaction to this?
You want to start, Claire?
No, I'm going to let you start with that one.
Okay. How do you enable someone is basically what you're asking.
Yeah,
like,
kind of how to. We want to help people enable more. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
Right. Like meaning when are you enabling and when are you not?
Exactly. I think that's a good way to attack it, because sometimes I find that people are told that they're enabling, and a lot of times they'll ask their therapist or someone else, they'll say, what does that mean?
I guess the first thing I would say is, like everything we talk about here, and maybe it's why we're talking about all these subjects, you have to think it all through. And it can get complex because situationally depends on a lot of things. And it depends on the person, depends on where they're headed. But in essence, you do not want to enable anything that is unhealthy or destructive. Okay. So in general, okay. Now there's a lot of murky territory when you get into that. Sometimes, some people will say, well, you can't stay at my house. You can't do that. You have to do this. Sometimes that actually just throws people into panic or dangerous situations. And they say, well, someone told me that if I let you stay here or whatever, I'm enabling you. So all of that there's a lot of gray area, and you have to really parse that situationally, because the goal is to help the person get into a better place. So, and from my perspective, you have to really think through what is going to help them. And part of that is a conversation with them. If they're just using you in a way that is furthering a lifestyle in a way that isn't helping them, that needs to be considered. And so I'm speaking to it broadly because it's hard to say specifically without kind of the situation. But in general, you want to support things that are healthy. Someone says, look, I need to stay here and I need help getting off this. And I'm going to get into a detox, and, can you help me get from here to there? And you're like, oh my God, I'd be enabling you. That's a brutal situation. And I've talked to parents and people who've done that. And I think you have to be really clear on what the objective is. There are other options now too. Like you can go to doctors and you can get help with medications to get you until you can get to a detox. So I think in general, you've got to think it all through. You want to get people out of any situation that's dangerous, in terms of overdose, in terms of the law, or doing something that's illegal. And so those are the things that you want to find other ways around and not promote in general.
There's a feeling of what is it that I'm enabling? Because enabling, like, what's the difference between enabling and empowering? And I think what you're saying is the principle is enable good behavior, don't enable bad behavior. To me, that's the underlying underpinning of how to help someone. Like, because there might be times where staying at my house is not safe for me, not safe even for them, or not safe for other people. If I have a child and they are getting their siblings in danger, they're bringing weird people around the house and they're not willing to respect that, that's a very different situation than if they're using it as a safe base of operations to schedule treatment or apply for jobs or follow through on their probation, whatever it is. Then you're enabling someone to have good behavior, which we usually think of as empowering, right?
And those are great examples. That's it.
Yeah.
That's right. So the intention is critical. Like where are you headed? And and genuinely and am I helping you get to a healthier place? So that's the main way I think about it. But there's a lot of situations like you're bringing up that have to get parsed.
Yeah, I think trying to approach it with a principle-based decision is always more difficult. It's easier to have a flat catch-all answer, like, don't do it. Then, like you said, people will say, well, I've been told if I give anyone money, then I'm enabling them. But yet I've known a lot of people that will, cautiously and with discussion, maybe help pay a bill directly to a creditor if they can afford it, and it helps someone to, and if it helps someone to not get lost, their child or someone to not get hopeless or despondent. But it kind of falls down to, would you do that anyway, right? and if you have a relationship with your kid where, boy, they're going to lose their apartment if they don't get a little help this month, maybe I'll drop a check off directly to the office. But is that enabling them? Well, it depends, doesn't it?
It does, and it does, and it's a dialogue. If I do this, then where are you headed? And then here's the course forward. If you want my support, here's what we're gonna do. Right? Okay. You got to get into treatment. We got to do this. We got to do that, and I'll help you with that. Right? Or if you can and if you want to. Right? And so there's no. It also depends on how the person feels and what the relationship is, and there's all kinds of factors. It's a hard topic to discuss generally, and I think your examples were good. But in general, if you can and if you feel inclined to help someone towards, getting better, that's good. Assuming they're sincere.
I hear what David is saying, and I think the major word here is intent. So if you are helping someone with a plan to achieve a healthier place, and obviously it has to be in the parameters of safety, yours and everybody that is involved in that decision, I think is usually, but not generally, a good option. But there's got to be a plan. You can't just say, oh, yeah, you can sleep here today, or I'll pay this bill for you today, without what's going to happen tomorrow, because another bill is going to come, or another day is coming as well. So, okay, I will do this for you, but what is our plan? Yeah. How we're going to do today so we don't have to go through this next week again. Yeah. So I think there's a bargaining, space over there where you can be helpful, and you can also create, a plan where the person also believes that they have some control in their future, some, say on what they're going to do. So I think it can be a positive. You can change that need, that, request, to actually a positive step towards a healthier space.
It's doing it purposefully, really. trying to say what's my goal and am I moving towards my goal.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And one of the things that gets people better is strong, healthy commitments. And so if I'm making a commitment towards somebody and they're doing it, that's a powerful thing. And honestly, the idea that you have to get sober for yourself, I don't believe 100%. I think it's great to do things for other people too, and to feel grateful for their help and their care. You can't be just doing it for that reason. That won't carry you through. You have to be doing it because you want to as well. But when all those things line up, it's actually a stronger commitment, and I actually think it creates more motivation, a stronger sense of support. There's a feeling of connectivity that helps carry things through. I think people are stronger when it happens that way.
It's like the dirty little secret sometimes of that principle. People say you got to do it for yourself, or else. And you're talking about that healthy sort of interdependence, I think, where you're saying like actually, there's a little. If it really wasn't for anyone else and my commitment to them, I might actually be less likely. So there's a balance there. I certainly don't want to say I'm doing it 100% for my partner, because then what if we break up, or if they get mad at me or something and I can blame them for relapse? I think that's the sentiment they say to be careful of, really. But really, I've found that without some commitment, at least to the world around us, we really don't want to get sober, because why would I?
That's it. That's right. That it should be everything. It's like I hear people who say that you have to love yourself first before anything can happen. That goes against almost every developmental process I've ever learned. That it really comes from the way people develop is through mirroring. It's from the beginning of our lives. It's through good mirroring. It's through being loved and cared about and taken care of and supported. Now, as you get older, you have to internalize that. You do have to carry that for yourself. You have to begin to create a healthier sense of independence, make healthy decisions, and be responsible for yourself. But the way to get there, and this goes on forever. It goes back and forth. The more loved and supported and taken care of we are by other people, the more we have an opportunity to internalize it, feel valuable, feel that and hold on to that, and then carry that forward and then give it back to other people too. That's how development really works. And by the way, that's part of what a treatment is about. And when I think of Domus and what we do here in our whole process, the main thing I think of is really helping people feel cared about, respected, understood, leaving here feeling like they had an experience of people who looked after them and cared about them. And that fortifies people. So that's really what therapy is about, ultimately, in many ways. And treatments significantly should be about.
It's interesting when you're looking at things in that nuanced way. There's almost always something that you can do. I find that one of the reasons people fall back into a trap of enabling or of helping without a plan is because they're told, don't enable, and they interpret that as don't do anything. And they can't bring themselves to, most of us can't bring ourselves to just not do anything for my kid. And so we don't do it smart then, because I feel like, well, I'm already breaking the rules and so I'll just, whatever, just stay here with no real plan or agenda or whatever. At least I see that a lot, where people feel like it's all or nothing. And so they're like, well, if I'm not comfortable completely cutting off my kid, then I'm not thinking in terms of what are my boundaries. At least I've seen that.
I see that a lot, actually more often than I would like to see. I think people are misguided by people that work in the field, but really have no training. And it's very easy for them to say, don't answer the calls. Don't let them come in. Don't. And again, they generalize a situation that they are really not knowledgeable about. Mm-hmm. And that puts people at tremendous risks, especially nowadays, that the drugs out there are so dangerous. So, I see that quite often, and sometimes it's scary.
Yeah. I've known of a couple of people who, for example, their experience with their adult child might be, if you're in my house, you're going to steal, or, we've had bad experiences before, so I can't let you stay here. But they'll put together maybe a little packet of information so that if you show up on the doorstep, here's where the shelter is, right? Here's the thing. And you know what? Maybe I'll drive you over, but you can't stay here tonight because then you'll refuse to leave tomorrow. That's just what's happened before. But here's something. And maybe they'll throw it on the ground, or maybe, whatever. But it's sometimes a little something that someone can do can feel empowering to the individual to say, hey, I've done something.
Of course. And I think every situation is unique. It's you can't make one decision and say to all parents to follow that. At that time, they can have some professional support throughout their decisions, because it's very, very exhausting for parents to go through this. There's a lot of manipulation. There's a lot of misunderstanding of the condition. There's a lot of, again, bad guidance from people. So I think it's important for them to have some kind of professional support, not just the patient, but the parents as well. But, every single day is a different day. And sometimes a person that yesterday was not willing, something happened on that day, and today they are. So, it could open a door for something, great, for something positive. So you cannot assess a event before it happens.
I think that's a great point. Maybe to look at the other side of enabling. So the danger would be that you can't bear the tension of telling someone no. You can't bear their distress or whatever pressure they put on you to try to do something. You don't want to bear that distress that's coming from them. And so I think the way to handle that, which is kind of what you're both talking about, is, and the way I try to handle it is I have a discussion about it. If I need to say, no, we can't do that, and we're not going to do that, and here's why. And I go through the whole process, and I explain to them as clearly as I possibly can why it's not in their best interest. And even though they may not like the answer, and they may feel upset or, because you're saying no to something, what happens is they actually feel thought about. They feel like you cared enough to explain to them a rationale. You explain that you have thought it through, and here's why you're saying no, and here's the danger and what they're asking for, and here's why you don't want to do it. And then you also help think about other solutions to their need, right? What happens is they feel cared about, even though you're saying, no, I can't do that, or I don't think it's the best thing for you. And they feel like you're still in process with them. That you're not just saying no and sending them off. So there's a process that's continued through it, and there's a way you stay connected. And also then it actually strengthens the relationship, because they feel like you can bear the tension of parts of themselves that they are having trouble with. Like you can hang in there with them when you need, and hopefully come up with a creative solution that is good for them. So I think that's the best way I know out of enabling.
We're going to call it there for today. Really grateful for those of you who have been able to join us. Looking forward to sharing with you next week the second part of this same discussion, where we will be talking about enablement as it applies to romantic partners and relationships. A podcast to answer your questions on addiction, recovery, and mental health is presented by the Wiseman Method Opioid Treatment Specialists and is hosted by Claire Wiseman, David Livingston, and Dwight Hurst. If you want to learn more about the treatments that we offer through Wiseman Method, or just learn more about treatment and addiction in general, head over to opiates.com to learn more about the Wiseman Method. You can also follow us on Twitter @opiates. Our music is the song Medical by Clean Mind Sounds. Glad to be with you every week, and want to encourage you to keep asking questions about these things and about everything. Because, as always, if you ask questions, you're more likely to find answers. And if you find answers, you can find hope. We'll see you next time on the Wiseman Method podcast.